Thank you very much for coming on Just Get a Real Job today. It's lovely to have you both on the show. I know one of you is recording from the old Vic as well, which is class. But before we start, just both want to introduce yourself and then we'll get into it. We've got loads to talk about.
Yes, hello, I'm James Piercy. I'm a writer, the co-writer of Fluff and the co-founder of Tepee Productions.
Hi, I'm Tayla Kenyon. I am an actor and a writer and the other co-writer of Fluff and the other co-founder of Tepee Productions.
Class. Well, it's lovely to have you both on. And you are in the upstairs of the old Vic in London right now. That's where you're coming live from, Tayla.
Yeah, I am. That makes it sound like I'm in something here, which I'm not. Just using their space because I'm in something at the Union Theatre just down the road, like a new writing night. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm in my old
James,
bedroom, so it's not quite the old Vic, but it still has some meaning to me in my life.
And you're in Birmingham, right? That's where you're based.
Yeah.
Class. No, it's interesting. Well, thank you for joining us from different parts of the UK. We're all come together. Obviously, you want to talk about your new play Fluff today. We're gonna plug that, which you're about to go and do a 3-month tour of, aren't you? So it's exciting, and that kicks off in 2 weeks or something, man.
No, a week. This time next week, Wednesday.
Wow. So, and when this goes out, you'll be mid tour. So that's exciting. Yeah. But yeah, why don't we kick off? Yeah. Tell us quickly about Fluff. We'll go into more detail as we go on, and then we'll get sort of talk about both of you and your careers and get to know you both a bit as well, because this podcast is all about the creative arts and helping people navigate it and get into it. And I know you've both done quite a lot of interesting work around accessibility in theatre, and you're very conscious of that as well. So there's lots I want to talk to you about. But yeah, tell us a bit about Fluff first, and then we'll talk a bit more about you guys personally. Do you want to go first, Tayla?
I always leave James to do the kind of synopsis of Fluff, because it's got lots of twists and turns, and we never want to give things away or sell it as just one thing when it's another. So I'm always just like, James, do our kind of thing that we've practiced, but now it's come to me, so I'll have to just suck it up and do it. Okay, so Fluff is a solo show. It's darkly comedic, and it is about a woman who is reflecting on her memories and her life choices, and she has to navigate her past and everything that entails to find her present, basically. So there's a bit of a cryptic way of describing what it is, but we have to try and not give things away. But along the side of that, it has themes of dementia, family, love, a little bit of intergenerational trauma in there. What we kind of inherit from our families, things that we want to inherit and things that we maybe don't. So yeah, there's quite a lot of layers to what's going on in the show. James, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a really great job.
Did I do it?
It was nice to sit back and let you do it for a change.
There you go. I've interrupted your usual flow there, but it seems to have worked. There you go. Some good practice. You can split the roles up.
Keeps us on our toes.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I should.
And how did you? How did you both come to collaborate on this project as well? How do you both know each other as well? Tell us that, because we don't often have sort of collaborators on the show at the same time.
Yeah, we found that quite a lot, actually. Whenever we've spoken to people, like the idea of two writers or being in a collaborative team usually is quite intriguing to people and how it works. And like you said, geographically, even today, we're not in the same space, and we didn't meet in the same location organically. During the pandemic, we're obviously in lockdown, and I think just to kind of keep ourselves creatively active, we'd both joined a writing group separately, which was bi-weekly, and we'd meet up every week. There'd be challenges, we'd write things, we'd discuss them, we'd talk about our ideas, our narratives, our characters, and then just slowly over the 10-12 week period of this writing course, we got to know each other. And then once it finished, we kind of reached out and said, I really enjoyed what you did during the courses. I really like your writing. You have a very similar sense of humor to me. Would you be interested in working on something? Obviously, Tayla also acts. So the notion was that we would create a show that Tayla could go on to perform. And then we just kind of continued these kind of weekly Zooms where we would come together and we'd discuss ideas, and slowly but surely that started to filter down to things that we had in common and things that we had a shared interest in, and we kind of had a shared history in terms of one particular thing, in terms of the dementia aspect of the show. And then just through that we started to throw ideas around, and then the character of Fluff was born. And then once we kind of had something to hang our hat on, we just slowly started to build this character from the ground up.
But yeah, Fluff's like what, 2 years in the sort of making as well, like a lot, like sort of, or would you say longer? Is it sort of maybe?
It was longer, to be fair, because we started the writing course that we did was during the pandemic, so that would have been 2020, and I still keep forgetting now that it's 2025. So I suppose it's been 5 years since we started
to get to this point. Yeah, it has been. I guess I don't know when we had the show. I'm a bit loath to say like the done show, because it's never feels quite done. Like you always want to keep writing and tweaking it. But maybe 4 years, maybe. But to this point, yeah, it's been 5 years. So.
Yeah.
Whoa, we're at that point now where lockdown, COVID was 5 years ago. I don't like hearing that out loud stuff.
It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. And yeah, and in terms of the themes of the show and stuff, dementia, memory, and all these things, like, was that something you both connected on? Have you got experiences with that maybe brought you together specifically, or did it come more organically?
Well, I think it started quite organic, because we were just talking about memory and how memory works, and how it's interesting that, you know, people remember things in different ways and can alter their own memories and things like that. And we were kind of just talking about that. And then from that conversation, it evolved into, I guess it then did evolve into the talk about Alzheimer's and dementia. And my granddad had dementia, so I have that experience. And James, I know someone in your family did too, right?
Yeah, so we just did, when we did a lot of research around it, we started to discover that there isn't just like this kind of one way of dementia working. There's like different aspects to it, and like alcohol-induced dementia can be a thing where it goes untreated, where it's someone's kind of alcohol for a really long time, that can start to have an effect on the brain and the memory, and it is considered like a form of dementia. So even though in our family it was never really diagnosed, and because obviously things come around too late, and our understanding of things come around too late, but the struggles of it and what you have to deal with, and as the person who goes through it and the family who are also witnessing to it are very similar. So I think just on the topic of just talking about family, we both kind of found out that we'd gone through similar things of watching someone we love kind of go through this hard time with it.
No, it is a very, I think it's so universal, because I think most people at least know one person, or they know of someone at least that's you know, had dementia, or a memory, you know, what am I trying to say here? So a disease that affects the memory is what I was trying to say. I was a carer, and for part of my time as a carer, I was actually in the pandemic as well, with disabled adults, and I worked with 2 guys with Down syndrome that had dementia. And like, what's interesting as well is the pandemic actually, it sped up their sort of decrease of memory, and it probably took a bit of time off their life, because they weren't going out and seeing people. And I think that, you know, that can help slow it down. So no, it's really interesting and an important theme to explore.
It is, because I think the other thing as well, it's about the stimulation of the brain and how it gets stimulated. And one of the things obviously we learned through the research is how music can obviously be like a great stimulant for people with dementia, and how that can really help with memory. And obviously during the pandemic, obviously people can do those things, and people did have access to things online, but ultimately like the physical interaction you had with people, or the kind of togetherness that we had, yes, we can do it all online, and that's fine, but you know, it's not the same experience as being in the room with people and having that kind of back and forth with people physically.
Yeah, but even you know, before the pandemic, before COVID, what I thought was really interesting, we work with 2 charities. So we work with Alzheimer's Society and Hearts Musical Memories, who are both amazing. And I was speaking with the founder of Hearts Musical Memories, and she said the main thing that people with dementia struggle with is loneliness. And I thought that was really interesting, because I think a lot of the time what happens is family members or friends or whoever think, well, they're not going to remember anyway, so I won't go and bother visiting, but they still feel loneliness, you know, like regardless of that, they still feel lonely. So yeah, that was just kind of an interesting insight that I hadn't really thought of before, I guess.
It was interesting as well, I suppose, because I think loneliness is probably can maybe cause dementia to come on faster as well. Because if you're older and you haven't seen anyone for years, and you don't have many close family or friends left, if people are starting to die or pass away as well, or you're isolated in it, you're not speaking and you're not getting that stimulation, so that can often bring on dementia faster as well. So I think it's interesting how it's all linked, for sure. And again, the arts playing quite an important role with things like music and allowing people to have memories. You know, they maybe remember a specific film or piece of theatre or something from their youth, that it can bring it all back. So it's interesting how it all sort of links in.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm not plugging them, but Hearts Musical Memories, again, I have to talk about it because it's amazing. I went to one of their workshops, so they go around and do music workshops for people with dementia, and like you say, it's literally magical. I'm sure you know, probably from working with people, but it's magical, like what happens when there's music on that they recognize, or references that they recognize, and they just come alive. And we try to reflect that in the show, but it's really shows the importance of the arts, I suppose.
I think the arts is so interesting when it comes to music, and it comes to theatre, and it comes to anything, because everyone kind of experiences it on a singular level. Like, it's kind of like from whatever it is to you, and you experience it on one thing, but then you kind of put it into a setting where there's other people experiencing it at the same time as you, and then it suddenly becomes something other than just being about you and this one particular thing. So watching, like Tayla was saying, with Hearts Memory, seeing people that maybe suffer with the same thing of dementia, and then being in a group and the music, it's just miraculous to see how art can be so inspiring and so healing to people.
Yeah, for sure. No, and exactly, again, why it's so annoying when people say things like, just get a real job, or they, devalue the arts. Speaking of memory, actually, good question for both of you, but do you both have a good memory? Do you, one of you got a better memory than the other? James, what do you think?
I think I've got quite a good memory. I do use a diary, which helps a lot now as I get older. Just to I used to be able to remember things quite well as to where I needed to be and at what time, but now I do need to start jotting things down. But I like to think I'm got a good memory. Tayla, I'll let you speak.
I actually don't have a great memory, which is obviously a bit weird, because obviously I learn lines, and there's a lot of lines in the show and things like that. So I guess in some ways I do, and then in other ways I don't. I guess it depends what I need to remember. Maybe it's selective. Maybe I'm selective.
Hopefully the tour dates are where you need to be.
We will be there. We will be where we need to be.
No, I think I was the same. I'm probably more like you, James. I feel like a pretty good memory, but I've started to use a calendar book, because I feel like I don't need to hold all this information in my head. Like, I'm quite good for being like, well, on this night I'm doing this and blah blah blah. But then it's like, why are you using all this bandwidth when you could just put it in the calendar and it'll tell you?
Write it down. It does help, but I also think as well it does take there's a sense of responsibility, in the sense that I like, if someone asks me to be somewhere and I've agreed to it, then I like to take accountability for it, so I can look at it and go, yes, I need to be here at this time and I will go. But then slowly but surely it starts to build up, and then sometimes I do look at my calendar and I'm like, James, you need to start saying no.
Yeah,
be everywhere and everywhere at the same time.
I know.
I feel you a lot on that one. I feel you a lot on that.
Yeah, I do the same thing, but I have to like color coordinate my it's a bit embarrassing, I know I'm saying this. I would like color coordinate my diary with everything that I'm doing, so it like has categories. Okay, this is embarrassing, I shouldn't be saying this, but yeah, so that's another level, I suppose.
I don't know, but I suppose it's good to have kind of like a list of urgency as to like what should be done.
Priority. Yeah.
Hopefully this is in the red and this is like a big priority.
Yeah, of course.
It just depends, Some things you're just like, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's sometimes hard to say. I think I'm quite bad for saying no to things. I think that's a skill, especially in the arts, because you're often encouraged, like, you need to say yes to opportunities. And do you know what I mean? And you're like, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Really I agree. Yeah, it's really hard because you always think, oh, it's about networking and it's about showing up and it's about being at things and seeing your face seen and being able to speak to people. And that's all, that is true. And obviously you do want to put the effort in to do that, but you can't go out there if you're at half a battery. You'll have to be fully charged and you have to be ready to go put yourself out there. And I think if you spread yourself too thin, then you're at risk then of being ill or being a bit under the weather or just feeling a slight bit depressed because you're not at the full functioning, you're not firing on all cylinders as you should be if you just gave yourself some time just to relax.
Yeah, it's so true. And also when like at drama school and in college and in the training, they literally teach you, they're like, say yes to everything. So you're kind of like taught that as an actor really early on, you should say yes to everything, which I get, I do understand, and in a way is right, but James, is the same as what you're saying. But if you're going to turn up and be like half dead, then there's no point being there. So yeah, there's a balance which is really hard in the arts, I think. Really hard.
I mean, this was a question I was going to ask you a bit later on, but I'll ask it now because it feels very relevant. But how do you both sort of protect your mental health in this industry, and how do you sort of recharge or make sure you switch off? James, do you have any strategies? Have you managed to? I mean, I feel like it's an ongoing process for me. It's tricky even after this many years of doing it.
Yeah, people always used to laugh at me because I feel like I am very extroverted and I do kind of get my energy from being around other people. But I think the other side of that is that you do need to go away and you need to hibernate a little bit. So I think there will be, when I was younger, it would be very, I would do it quite a lot. I would go out quite a lot and I would be around people, and then maybe the odd 1 or 2 days where I'd just kind of take for myself. And as I get older and I get into my 30s, those days do get longer where I do kind of hibernate a little bit to myself. But I just think being in your own space, being around, the things that you really, really love, whether that be, for me personally, like I love watching movies, so I can sit and watch 3 or 4 movies in a day if I've got the time, or I'll sit and read a book. And then I've also got those chosen people in my life that I will speak to on a daily basis that kind of feed me, my soul, and just give me that energy that I need. So it's just bringing the circle of people down a little bit smaller, and just kind of, finding the things that you do enjoy, just kind of, like I said, help you recharge your essence and battery, just so you can then go back out there into the world and give your 110 to that.
Yeah, I'm really bad. I'm really bad at switching off. I'm really bad at that kind of well-being stuff. James will tell you, like gets voice notes from me, and I mean, I'm a nightmare. I just really struggle to switch off. And even the things that I'll put in place for well-being, so like going for a run, for example, going for a walk, walking the dog, that kind of stuff, which really does help me. I'll then kind of put in a podcast like this one, which is actually still kind of work related, even though I'm enjoying it. And do you know what I mean? So there's always a bit of that going on with me, where I'm like, well, this is for my well-being, but then I'm listening to something still to do with writing or acting or producing or what, I'm still kind of in it. So yeah, but exercise, I do try to exercise, and making time for friends and family definitely is a big one. I love the bath. I'm like obsessed with having a bath. So if ever I don't actually have a bath at home, so I have to like go to people's houses to have a bath. But yeah, that is my main thing. Like if I'm really stressed, I want a bath, and then exercise, try and eat well, drink water. Like I try to do those things, but in terms of like switching off, yeah, I find that very difficult.
I feel like when we go on tour now, every time you start to get a bit stressed, we'll have to be like, where's the nearest bath?
Where's the bath? Yeah, literally.
I'm going to knock on some random's door and be like, can I please use your bath?
Urgent.
Or near, like even a swimming pool. There's like a swimming pool that I could just float in or something.
Float in. Water therapy. That's what you need. You need hydrotherapy.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, it's really interesting what you're saying about the podcast stuff. Like, I'm quite bad for that as well. Like, I'll go for a walk and it is my chill time, but I do find myself listening to like things related to either self-development or like, the arts or whatever it is. And as much as I'd love to not, as much as I love to encourage people to listen to this show and, keep engaging with the podcast, it's also important to take a bit of time out. So I'd say like 80% of our listeners will probably work in this industry because it's very industry focused. But, please keep listening, but also you can turn off if you want to go and do something else. That's very fair.
I don't think it doesn't stress me out or anything like that. It's just I don't know. It's just my mind's just weird like that. It's the same with like I'll be like, oh, I'll read. It's reading. It's time for reading. That would be like wind me down, and then I'll read a play, and then it's like within reading the play, I'm thinking about how the play's crafted, or so it's like there's always something that's not quite switched off, unless I'm in the bath, basically.
But I think it depends.
Sorry, James.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I think you can take. It's like for me, for example, if I ever listen to podcasts, like I really enjoy podcast. There's two particular ones that I really listen to, which one was about Best Actress Oscar winners, and I just think like it's kind of adjacent to what we do, where it's discussion of acting and it's about the film itself and it's about thematic, but it's not quite where I'm sat there going, oh, this is what I need to do. So you can find things that are in the the wheelhouse of what you enjoy, but it doesn't quite make you think, oh, I'm not doing enough and I should probably be doing more.
Well, it's hard to escape, isn't it? Because like the arts is in everything. Like you could argue listening to music and watching TV, watching films is all like part of that. So yeah, I know what you
mean. But you don't, it's a balance as well, isn't it? Because sometimes you just need to switch off, and that's a good thing as well. But I always find if I can switch off watching TV or a film, and I'm not thinking about it from like a story point of view or something, or how would I do this as a script or whatever, like I know that is really good, so that's a good barometer for me as well. If I get lost in it, I'm like, okay, this is great because it's turned that side of my brain off. But it's very tricky. I want to ask you both about sort of your early influences as creative people. So if you can cast your memory, as we talked about earlier, back a bit further, like do you both remember when you were young, like were you always into the arts, or did that come a bit later? You can start with you, James, on this one.
Oh, 100%. I again, like from the very early age, like my entire childhood, I was always watching movies and sticking the VHS tape in and taking it out and rewinding it and put it back in. And even with neighborhood friends, like we would play act. Like we would never really play with toys. Like we would play and we would, role play, and we'd pretend we were the X-Men, or we would, reenact films that we really, really loved. And I remember seeing Matilda, and I thought I was Matilda for a really long time, and I thought I could make things move. And then as I got older, and I think through acting and watching people play, then introduced me to the world of storytelling, and how I would then start watching films, and I would imagine myself in films, but I'd change the storyline in my head, and then that became like storytelling to me. And then obviously as you get older, you start to introduce yourself to a bit more mature themes in terms of books and plays. But I think it always comes down to the imagination and storytelling, and people have been doing that for ages. But for me, it came through those kind of childhood films that you would watch, like The Wizard of Oz, or like I said, the stories of Roald Dahl, where things were just slightly a little bit more imaginative than real life, and then you just kind of imagine yourself in them. And then I suppose as I got older, I thought, okay, well, this is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to tell stories and be a part of telling them.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same for me. So since I was like really young, I remember writing lots of short stories, doing poems and entering short story competitions and poem competitions, and writing songs that were terrible, and getting my brother to like bang on a basket and pretend he was playing the drums, and that was like our band. And then we would like show begrudgingly, because none of my family are actually into the arts. They're not like that, so I have no idea where any of it came from. But yeah, since I was younger, I've always been doing things like that, and forcing my family to watch in the living room as I do a play or whatever. So yeah, I don't know where it came from. I did go to the theatre and things like that, and Panto and Amdram, and do clubs and things, but it's not like I can identify like a person in my family or anything that I think that came from. But I do recall that from a really young age, that's what I loved.
Didn't you tell me the other day that you still to this day write pantos at Christmas and get your family to act them out?
They're not pantos, they're serious plays. They're serious Christmas plays.
I do apologise.
Yes, yeah, so it's evolved. So it used to be that I would force my siblings into doing the play and then the family would watch the play. But it's evolved now that I write a script and everybody gets a part. So it's like a reading at Christmas. Yeah, that's what
Is it
happens.
popular, or do you think it's more for you?
Do you know, they tell me they like it, but I don't know. I don't know if they do, but they always say, you know, that's really good. Maybe they're just kind of, I don't know, amusing.
It's Christmas, they're being nice.
Yeah.
Similar, kind of on this theme as well. Like, I always love asking people about where they're from and how where they're from's impacted them as creative people, because I don't know, I do think identity always plays a big part. So where are you both from, and how has that impacted your careers and stuff? And Tayla, you can go first this time.
Yeah, so like I was saying, it's hard to identify actually. So I'm from Hemel Hempstead in Hertfordshire, and there's like the Old Town Hall where we're performing Fluff actually, and that's a great venue. There's Watford Palace, so there are like some theatres and things around there, but there's not masses, there's not loads going on in terms of the arts. Like I said, I did Amdram when I was younger, and some clubs, you know, dance clubs and singing clubs and all that kind of stuff that most children do probably. But yeah, there's not loads in the area, so I don't know if being from Hemel really inspired me. And even the school I went to, the secondary school, wasn't great for drama or music or anything like that. So it is a bit of a mystery where that came from. My parents would take me to shows. We didn't go all the time, but we would go maybe a couple of times a year, like to the West End to see a big show or to see Panto at Christmas, things like that. And I guess maybe it was just that. It's just being inspired by that and the things that I did see. And then maybe like subconsciously now I have this drive for like more local stuff and accessible stuff from that. Maybe, I'm not sure.
I'll let James answer this question, and I want to talk about that local stuff because I think it's quite important. I listened to you guys on a radio show talking about accessibility and stuff in theatre, and I think it's quite an interesting and important topic. But James, tell us first about, you know, where you're from, and then we can touch on that.
Yeah, I'm from Birmingham. I'm from the kind of heart of Birmingham, and I've always been from this part. I live in an area called Small Heath, which is now I think is a lot more well known now, which is because people.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
It's set there, whereas before Peaky Blinders, people probably wouldn't know it very well, except for the fact that maybe the Birmingham City Football Ground is here. But it's and Studio Lock, which is the new Stephen Knight, is kind of on our doorstep now. So again, it's as time goes by, like more things are coming into the area, but for a very short period of time, Birmingham, considering it is the second city, doesn't have as many resources as you would think it would. And just recently, unfortunately, I think the council went bankrupt, and I think a lot of the art funding went. So it's like we're still very much in a place where it's limited, but, you know, people are still around and people are still trying to make the work happen. But I think in terms of influence of the area, I think it's a very working class background. And I think what's always been great about that is just kind of bearing witnesses to the lives, the quiet lives that go on around you. And Small Heath at one point was kind of the place where all the Irish people came and lived, which is kind of how my family got here. And then generationally, as we've grown up, obviously there was an influx of like a large Muslim community, and then there's a Somalian community, and then you've kind of got this hotbed of everyone kind of living together in a very, you know, multi-ethnic society and cultural society. And it just allows you to bear witness to like different lives and different stories. And when you go to school, then you're with people that come from a completely different background and different faiths and beliefs. And I think that just opens you up to a world of possibility. And again, just kind of in a creative sense, you get to see beyond what your own household is, and you get to find out what's going on in other people's lives. And that could be quite inspiring and influential.
No, it's really interesting. Again, like I think it's interesting how different where everyone, you know, is from as well. And like I think a lot of people bring their own unique background into the arts. And I think you can always tell in people's work as well a little bit of that. No, it's interesting. But yeah, Small Heath obviously got its own sort of weird, sense of identity. It's interesting that a show can do that for an area. I think that's why it's so important to the areas get represented on screen or in art, because it can have such an impact. Even though there's clearly still work to be done, and obviously I'm not saying Peaky Blinders is the most representational show in the world either, but it's good for an area, very specific type of him.
Yeah, it's done its job. Like, people now are aware of the area and they know of it, and it's always cool just to you're like, oh, Peaky Blinders, and you're like, yeah, that's kind of like our calling card now. But I think that's I think as if you are Tayla was just saying about Hemel, and the same with me. It's like if you kind of write about where you're from and you're true and authentic to the place, then kind of creates and it can live on in art somehow, and then people are aware of it. So the same with Peaky Blinders and Small Heath. It's like now people in America know about Heath, which they probably never would have before.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the local thing as well, and the importance of representation in theatre, and like taking theatre into places that maybe traditionally wouldn't have had access to it. Because obviously, I know you're in London right now, for example, that there's loads of theatre in London. And I know London's a huge place and there'll be communities in London that don't have access to it, but it's a sort of place where you probably could go to the theatre quite easily if you grew up there. Whereas where I grew up, there was some theatre, but, it wasn't like massively accessible, and you maybe needed money to go into the city and access it. And, if you're from a working class background like myself or something, that might not always be a possibility, because you're factoring in like train fares and maybe dinner out, and then you're going to this. It's like a big event, whereas like for a lot of people, they don't have that option. So yeah, I mean, it's an important thing. But tell us about that and how that sort of become quite an important aspect of this show and your company and stuff. Maybe start with you on this one, James.
Yeah, it was kind of, we always spoke about it even just before we even started talking about doing the play, and when we were creating the play, is the fact that if you are in London, it's great and you get access to all these things. But if you're not and you are from somewhere else, like for me, for Birmingham, like again, like it's not that far, but still the price of a ticket, a train ticket alone is quite pricey. Then you have to take into consideration the price of the ticket of the theatre, and then there's like food, and so before you know it, like a simple day out can rack up. But then even within the city of Birmingham, growing up, I can remember like the places like the Hippodrome and the Rep, which would sometimes cater to the Christmas pantos, or like the big musicals that get tore out of London. But in terms of like new writing, in terms of like new work, like it was very rare that there was ever anything like that. And there are like few places now, like the Old Joint Stock is one of the ones that we're going to, and thank God for places like that have these black box spaces above pubs, and they're great venues to host new work, but still they're very few and far between. And so one of the major things that we wanted to do when we were like organizing the tour was make sure that we go to these kind of like smaller cities outside of London, places up north, just to kind of give local communities the opportunity to see new writing that they might not necessarily get the chance to see unless they go to London or a big city like Manchester or even Newcastle, I suppose. I know, like, I studied in Newcastle, and I know they're thriving when it comes to the arts, but again, they've had to do that because they're so far away from London. But that's what I love about people that just do it for themselves and do it for their own communities, and we kind of wanted to be a part of that when we did this tour.
Yeah, and I think kind of linking to what you were saying, Jamie, it's like my family and friends and lots of people that I know from Hemel, and I'm sure from other places, when they think of going to the theatre, they think of like West End, because that's all they know. Like they don't know about fringe theatres, they don't know about theatres above pubs, they don't know about scratch nights or new writing events. They just have no knowledge of it at all, that it even happens. So when I've had friends and then they come to a fringe show or whatever, they're like, oh, this is different. So it's just kind of trying to bring that to smaller communities as well, because it can actually be so easily done. Like there's community halls and venues where, okay, yeah, it's not a theatre, you're not going to get like the lighting and the sound and all that, but if you're like doing a scratch night, experimenting with new writing, then that you've got a hall there, you've got a space where people can come and watch and they might not, like you say, have the funds to go into London to do that. And maybe especially for a scratch night, things like that, and then that might inspire them, and it also helps the creatives. And so just trying to get like smaller communities kind of finding their people or whatever, and giving those spaces, because I think it is doable. It's just we just don't do it enough.
Is that kind of part of the mission of your company as well? Is that something that is quite important to the values? And I know you've done this play, but like I'm assuming you'll have other ambitions and plans in the future and stuff as well after this.
I don't think we've ever really, like, it's interesting because it's something that I don't think we ever sat down and really discussed. I just think inherently, like that was just always a part of our being in our fiber, because that's obviously where we're both from. So therefore, that's what we wanted to give back. But we have obviously subsequently spoken about it. And obviously when we were kind of coming up with our mission for the tour and what it was about and what we wanted to do and, the things that we wanted to learn along the way, it was there. But I think it was just naturally there anyway. And I don't think we were like, oh, that's what we have to do. It's like, well, we just knew naturally that is what we were going to do. Yeah, because
of our backgrounds and where we're from, I guess. And I think it also really helped. We did a Watford community tour of Fluff when we were kind of developing it, and with Watford Council, which was great. And it's also like just seeing people's reactions and how grateful they are, and you just feel like these are kind of, I don't know how to put it, but like your everyday people, rather than like when you go to the theatre and it's quite often like the same dynamic of people, because not everyone can access it and stuff like that. But when we did the community tour, it was just like so many, just, I don't know, everyday people. It just felt so representative of people, and they were so grateful for it. And I guess that really helped in this drive of when we go forward, because we're working on another play at the minute as well, and I definitely want to try and put that in some community halls and local venues and get some feedback from local people and do the same things again. I definitely would like to do that with it.
No, it's really interesting. I think it's so important to engage locally, and again, that's where like a lot of change can happen. Not that change can't happen on a bigger scale, but I think it is those like smaller projects sometimes that can really feel connected to people and stuff. Just as well to ask you about the company and about TP and stuff and how that's like evolved. Like, how did you decide to start that, and what are your sort of ambitions for it beyond Fluff?
Well, we started because as we were creating the show and we wanted to take it out to audiences, we were looking for funding. And as Tayla just pre-mentioned, we started working with Watford Council to do a bit of community tour, and then we got a little bit of funding there, and the team there is just like so fantastic, and I don't think we would have been able to do a lot of the things that we did if we hadn't had the guidance from them. And I think the first thing they said was like, oh, like with the money aspect, like you could create like a community interest project, and that could be like your company, and that would be like a really great way for you to move forward, and we can help you set that up. So we were like, great, let's do that. So obviously then we created the name, and we got that up on its feet, and then slowly but surely, and we were creating the show and we were taking it out there, and then we were talking about the origins of the production, and then people realizing that was a possibility, and then us realizing how lucky we were with that, and then how we could kind of spread the word on it to other people, obviously massively helps. And then obviously we've started with theatre, and obviously it became a theatre thing, but like everyone, you have ambitions outside of that. And I think, just recently we've been talking about television would be a great opportunity, but we were looking at audio drama and realizing how kind of audio drama is at the moment. Like we've just been talking about it earlier on. Everyone kind of walks around with the headphones in now when they go on their like trying to get their 10K steps. But you've got such a wealth of technology that can help you in terms of soundscape, that can create something so lush and big, and it's one step up from a book, I suppose. And it's just you've got if you've got less of a budget and you can't really do theatre, or you can't really do like a film of some kind, then audio drama seems to be like a great in point.
And it's accessible again, definitely. Just adding to that, for like people that like we had this amazing training to try and make our show accessible for visually impaired, and we did touch tours and things like that. But when we were talking with people giving us the training, they were telling us about how you like all the marketing with social media and stuff, it actually isn't very accessible for everyone, but things that are audio are. So yeah, just things that we didn't think about to make the show more accessible for everyone, or our future shows as well.
Because everything is nowadays so visual, and we see everything, and we kind of take everything in through our eyes. And you get that from, you know, reels, and you get it from Instagram posts, or you get it from posters. And, you know, until we had this training most recently, we thought, oh, you know, it is kind of limiting like a large part of an audience that would be interested in your show or interested in what you have to, you know, your product, and they actually don't have access to it because you haven't actually thought about them as a demographic. And I think it kind of really made us think about how we will use that moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think we probably have to be more creative, because unfortunately fringe theatre and stuff without budgets and without as much money, it's really hard to make that accessible. I love the Edinburgh Fringe to bits, obviously I'm up in Scotland and stuff, but that's so inaccessible as a festival, because you're in all these bizarre venues where not very good wheelchair access. Most performers couldn't afford like someone to come and sign, for example, for deaf or people with hearing impairments, like, or, you know, visual. It's just so hard when you're like a scratch artist to, or like a new theatre company to even budget that in. And I think you do have to, I'm not saying people shouldn't do that, I just think you have to maybe work a bit harder or think a bit more outside the box. So it's good to, you know, have these conversations around it still. And unfortunately it's a product of, because especially at the moment, cost of living, like the arts are just so squeezed, and it's even hard to have a sustainable career, let alone put on a tour without all these extra things as well. It just makes it more tricky for us to have that accessibility, but it still, you know, doesn't make it any less important.
But I think it puts the pressure on new artists or up and coming artists because I think we're all socially conscious of how much we want to do better and be better and provide more. But sometimes the resources are just not there for you when you first start out as a company or as an artist. And I think that's where like this kind of pay it forward thing happens. Like if we're ever in a financial situation in like 10 years time where we might have some sort of resources, then we could be like, okay, well, let's try and do some mentoring, or let's try and look into like extra funding specifically for those things. Like, can we get something that, you know, shows the script, like the subtitles on stage? Can we get some sort of fund that gets people in to do, you know, BSL? Or is there a way in which we can help the venue provide more of an access free, you know, like wheelchair free access? But again, sometimes when you first start out, you can sometimes get blindsided by the other hardship of putting on a show and then the excitement of putting it on. And so when you are doing something like Fringe or Ed Fringe, I can imagine like venues are so hard to come by, and to grab a venue that you will just take a venue and go with it. And I suppose the thought of maybe wheelchair access might be at the back of your mind, but then you think, oh, if I could have the funding, or if there was some sort of resources out there that could help me, I think everyone would take it. I just think, is it out there, and where is it? And, you know, how can we help more people to be more aware of that when they're creating their shows?
No, completely. I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. And again, we can only do what you can as well. But I think it's so vital, and also to keep the ladders behind you as well, as if you're starting to progress, like making sure that you're giving back to people in maybe the way that they helped you coming up. I think it's just, unfortunately, in this industry, it is very competitive sometimes. I don't really like being competitive. I always think there's enough success to go around. It's about, I think if you work with other people, it is a collaborative industry, but unfortunately there's that, I think you maybe get taught, we're in quite an individual society, so it's all, you know, it can be hard not to be self-focused sometimes, but I think trying to not think about it as a competition is a massive help as well.
Yeah, but I think things get sold as you're selling a product, aren't you? And I think when you're selling a product, it's almost like, take ours, not theirs. But it's like, well, no, if we make it affordable, then you can have ours and theirs.
And completely.
And I also think, like as you just said, Jamie, just kind of reiterate, it's so weird because everything about the industry is collaborative. You can't do things on your own. You can't create a show on your own. But then there is this competitive nature, or like it just actually doesn't make sense when you're trying to create work to be that way. And James and I are so not like that, are we? Like, you know, we are so into collaboration, and it's not about who's better or what, any of that stuff. And I think that's maybe another reason that we work well together, because we have the same morals and beliefs and things like that. But not everybody does. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it just it's not going to help you, so it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
The other reframe, sorry, James, you go. Sorry to interrupt again.
It's right. I was just going to say, like, in terms of collaboration, and I think with everything that you ever do, I think there's more to be learned when you just stop and listen. And I think when it comes to collaboration in the arts, that's fine. But I was just thinking the wider world as well. I think so many people try. And I know we were just talking over each other because there was a delay, but when people talk over each other and they try and be the loudest in the room, or they try and make themselves look the best, and it's like, okay, well, that's no one really aspires for that. No one really looks upon ego as like a nice thing to have. But I think by listening just to other people and their ideas, and you can learn so much more from that.
Completely. And I was going to say as well, I think it's a reframe I try and say to people, and again, like, I think I just do this instinctively, but I think if somebody's making great work, it's like, I don't want to see them as a competition. It's like, what can I learn from them? What are they doing that maybe I could do better or something? It's like a good thing to think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Tayla has done this as well when she goes. I think I try to do this, but again, geographically sometimes it's quite hard, but it's not because of Zoom. But Tayla, I know, has done this a lot where we'll see a show, or she's worked with somebody or saw something, and then she'll reach out to them. And obviously I don't want to speak for you, Tayla, but I know you've reached out and then you've gone for coffees with people, and there's nothing competitive about it. It's just a willingness to just listen to what they have to say and what advice they have to offer.
Yeah, and like you said, Jamie, it's just like, I love your work. Your work inspires me. I want my work to be as good as your work, and it's not like I want my work to be good and no one to see your good work. It's not that. It's like your work makes mine better because it's so good, or whatever. And and then connecting with those people, and it's just like, it's just something I don't think, again, I don't want to speak for you, James, but I don't think we really understand that mentality of seeing it any other way.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What I like about the podcast medium, weirdly, and it's a nice thing. Most people are quite supportive in the space, so like, you'll go on their show, they'll come on your show. It's like very like, I don't know. It's you don't see it as competition. It's like, I love seeing other podcasts. I'm like, oh, that's class. Like, you're doing a really similar thing. Like, I love, I think that's cool. Like, it helps the overall product of like of the medium. For sure. I know we're at 50 minutes, so I want to let's quickly talk about the tour again. Like, there'll be a link to it underneath so people can click and you'll see all the dates and stuff. But do you want to, I don't know off the top of your heads, have you got any dates and places that you would quickly just mention? Where can people find the company and all this stuff? It's all linked below anyway. So.
Well, James, you know the dates for the old joint stock off the top of your head, don't you? And I know Hemel. We know our roots. So the performance in Hemel is on the 21st of February. And then I think from there we go to like the Phoenix Arts Centre, and then Swindon, and then Bristol. We go to the Torch Theatre in Milford Haven. Which they might all be in the wrong order, but there's the Swan Theatre in
people can click anyway,
just click and you'll see.
We have like an Instagram, and we have which is TP Prods, which I tend to get tongue tied over when I'm telling people, but it's TP Prods is usually our handle for most social media, and obviously every information we have is on there. But like Tayla said, we get to go back to Hemel Hempstead, and then we've got Birmingham at the Old Joint Stock on the 10th and 11th of March, and we go to Newcastle as well, and York as well. But it's nice because there's so many places along the way that, for me anyway, that Birmingham is where I'm from, and so it's nice to bring things back to your hometown. And then I studied in Newcastle, and there's kind of like these full circle moments. And they've been I studied over 10 years ago, so it just shows that things aren't a race; they're a slight jog.
No, completely. That actually sort of ties me into the next question for you both as well. But like, what's the sort of biggest lesson, as you're talking about how it's a jog there, James? But what's the biggest lesson you've maybe learned in your career so far? You can go first if you like.
Well, I think the one thing again, like I suppose, is I think I always wanted to try and when I was younger, I was always trying to like appeal to other people and what they were looking for and what they wanted as a writer, or what material they wanted to put on and what interested them. And I think you slowly start to learn that once you start writing about things that interest you the most and the things that make you excited, then the work comes a lot easily, right, from the pen to the paper. But then I can sometimes get really anxious around things, and I think one of the biggest pieces of advice anyone ever said to me was just kind of like, feel the fear and then do it anyway. And I always kind of take that with me in terms of any kind of writing work that I might start, or any networking event we're going to go to. It's like, okay, this might be a little bit like, you know, I might feel a bit anxious about this, or I might be scared to start a new project because I don't know how it's going to turn out, or I might be invited on a podcast and I don't really know what's going to come out of my mouth. But you know, just feel the fear, but then do it anyway, because you never know how it turns out and, you know, what might happen because of it.
No, for sure. What about you, Tiff? Thank you very much. It's a great answer.
I think, I mean, there's been lots of lessons. It's hard to pin it down to one, but I think the kind of most useful thing I've learned is, and it's for life as well as within the industry, but is to control the controllables, which my partner says to me all the time. So has to constantly remind me. But it's so true. Like, you can only control what you do and the work you do and what you put into it. And in this industry, there's just so much that's not in your control. So, you know, whether it's like we're talking about whether you have the finances to put on your show, whether you win a competition for your play to be put on, whether you're picked for a part if you're an actor, or even get the audition. It's not always in your control. You might not look the right way, you might not, you know, be in the right place at the right time, or that's not what they want. You're not in control of that. So I think it's just to focus on, it's kind of similar to James's point, just focusing on your craft and what you can do and what you love doing, and that's it, and trying not to let the rest of it get to you, as hard as that is, but trying, having a bath in those moments.
No, I completely agree with that. It's really hard though. I'm bad for sometimes. I think it's trying to just let go of things that you can't. I feel like I like to try and feel like I'm in control of as much as I can in my life, not just even in work and career, but like, you know, I want to have like a bit of control over everything, but you can't really. And I think it's sometimes just like, I need to just let go of this and just see what happens. And usually it's fine as well. Ironically, by doing that, you normally actually end up, things work out better anyway, but it's tricky.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
Really
Someone
tricky.
once said to me before, and I think this is really nice advice to have, is someone's like, if you worry about something before it happens and then it happens, you end up worrying twice. And I thought, okay, great. I'm just going to worry once it happens. And until then, I'm not going to care about it.
Yeah, completely. No, that's really true. Very bad for doing that, but you know, it's all a process, isn't it? Another question I wanted to ask as well is what's your favorite thing about Fluff? Like, what's your favorite thing about the play each?
Shall I go first? Okay.
I'll let you find that one out.
Yeah. So as an actor, is actually a bit of a dream as an actor, because it goes on such a journey. I get to play lots of different characters. So Fluff kind of reenacts the people in her life as she remembers them. So there's lots of different characters that I get to play, as well as Fluff, who is such an interesting and complex and layered, and I think truthful, flawed, yes, but truthful person. So I think, again, hard to pinpoint one thing, but it's just having the opportunity to play that. And there's quite an emotional roller coaster of journey and ages. Like she flips through different ages and different memories and things like that, and it's challenging, but I think that's what I love about it, is it's so full. It's just so, there's so much. It's not one thing, it's not one dimensional in any way. It's really full.
And I think for me, the character of Fluff is obviously really complex, and she is really nuanced, and you know, we kind of get to see her at different parts during her life, and then the engagements that she has with other people. But I do think the one thing that is my favorite about the show, and I think, you know, we have worked really hard with it, is to make sure that the show does have real heart to it. And again, not to like try and give too much away, but there is one specific moment that happens in the play where Fluff comes together in a moment with her father, and you know, the director made this really great choice to use a prop. But what's great about this moment and why it always sticks with me every time we show it to a new audience, it's like it seems to be the moment where everyone just kind of like is elevated slightly and they're really drawn into like the emotional pull of this scene. And I think it's because this simple thing that the director did creates a universal feel that anyone can put somebody that they think of into the position of Fluff's father. And I think they had like this kind of, you know, overwhelming experience with it, and it's so fulfilling and so satisfying to know that that scene is coming up, and I know that the reaction people are going to have to it, because people always have the same reaction, and when people come out, it's that moment that people always speak to us about, and for that then becomes an almost favorite moment, because I'm looking forward to it happening, and I'm looking forward to hearing people's response to that moment. And it's not always like the same response, like some people can have a different one, but it's always the moment that people always will speak to us about, I think.
No, that's class. It's always nice when you feel like your work's connected with an audience as well. And sometimes that's interesting because it's something you don't expect as well. It's nice that it's like a similar moment, but there's probably been incidents when somebody's come up and said something, you're like, we didn't even mean that. That's just a total, you know, it's a nice feeling.
But you pretend that you meant it.
It's intentional.
100%.
That's exactly what 100%. We intended.
That's why I always find things that, like, when you did English at school and you do an analysis of a book and then you're like thinking, like, did they actually mean this? Like, I don't know. That's so interesting. The amount of times I've given notes to a writer and I'm like, this is great. And they're like, oh, I just thought I'd just chuck that in there. Just I couldn't think of what to say, but I'm glad you've taken this meaning away from it. I'm like, yeah, great. Cool.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Well, firstly, I've got one more question for you both, but just firstly, before I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been lovely to have you both on the show. Nice to see the old Vic get a bit of representation there. I know there's a few people walking in the background. They're going to become famous on YouTube or whatever, you know. So
I'll tell them on my way out.
Enjoy. Yeah, thanks to the old Vic for providing it. But just we like to sort of close the podcast. You'd shared quite a lot of great wisdom and advice for it, but like closing advice for anyone that maybe wants to work in the arts, but particularly in the area that you're in, or you feel like sort of your role represents. So maybe start with you, Tayla, on this one.
Yeah, it's got to go back to that conversation earlier about collaboration and working with people, being nice to people, which is such a weird piece of advice to give, isn't it? Because you'd think that would be a given. But yeah, be nice to people and be interested in their work and collaborate where you can. I also think a lot of it's about persistence and resilience and work ethic, especially, you know, we've talked again about working class backgrounds and things like that. So there are more barriers for different people, but just keep going and things will happen eventually. It takes time as well. That's a bit of advice. It takes time.
Yeah, and I think on the back of that as well, like time is a big thing. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially when we're younger, thinking that we have to achieve so much by a certain age. And obviously that, you know, some people are really lucky and things happen for them a lot quicker than they do for other people. But, you know, just because you might start off doing something at 16, 17, 18 doesn't mean that, you know, by the time you're 35 or 40 that it won't happen. I think it's, like I said earlier, it's like it's not always about like a race to the finish line. It's about, you know, the journey along the way, and it's the people that you meet and the collaborations that you make. And I think one thing that what a great gift that comes with getting older is you kind of start to understand yourself a little bit more, and you start to get a certain wisdom, and your toolkit changes, and you know the things that happen to you in life. So I think your work changes as you get older, and I think that's why kind of finding your singular voice and what that is, whether that's as an actor, as a director, as a producer, or you know what themes interest you, or what, you know, material you want to create. I think as you get older you start to discover that more, and I think you're able to make more of a razor sharp focus on things that you want to leave in the world. And I think if you can start working on that as soon as possible, then great. And I think what it comes down to is just being authentic to yourself and really leaning into the things that you love and find interesting most.
And I think if you do that, the art will be better as well, and you'll enjoy it more, because a lot of a lot of this is just hard work and going through the quite boring processes a lot. So, and if you don't enjoy it, then it's going to be a lot harder. So,
yeah, don't do it if you don't enjoy it. So, yeah, definitely.
I know it's crazy enough when you do enjoy it at times, isn't it? So, you know, especially don't, but you know.
And I mean, if you're lucky enough to go on tour and you have to do it over and over and over and over and over again, then you want to make sure you really love it.
Yeah, don't complain, James.
Completely. Well, listen, thank you very much, both of you. I hope the tour goes brilliantly. There's so much more I could ask you both. We might have to do like a wee revisit later on when the tour's all finished and maybe see what you guys are doing next and stuff. But good luck with Fluff and the tour. And as I say, links below in the show notes. When this goes out, you'll be on tour, probably very tired. You'll be looking for a bath, I reckon, Tayla, by that point. But yeah, but wish you all the best with it. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us.